Okay, it's 9 o'clock. If we can call the meeting to order and have roll call, Kathy, please.
Certainly. Ring,
Here.
Lau,
Here.
Byram,
Yes.
Castillo,
Yes.
Singh,
Yes.
Star,
Here.
and Hurd.
Here.
The next is the approval of the minutes from the February 25th, 2025 meeting. Any changes? Seeing none. Approved. Anything on residence forum, Deborah?
Double checking online. Are there any resident forum speakers? No, and there are no in-person speakers. That concludes the residents forum.
Great. Chair's report, just really quickly to thank Adrian and Alice for running the meeting last month with me being vacation. Appreciate it very much. Next would be Jeff. Any general manager comments?
Just a few items. We are going to the Planning Commission regarding the pickleball court permitting on Thursday. So that'll be a big hurdle for that project completed. And then we're looking to get authorization to go out to bid as soon as we clear the permit process. So that project continues to move forward. We are, Todd's going to give an update on the overall accounting and reporting that we're progressing with in terms of NetSuite, so I'll defer to him on that. But everything else is going well. The sun is out, it's getting warm, which is always a great thing, so people can start enjoying the outdoors and the beauty of this place. So everything's good.
So, are you anticipating any problems at Walnut Creek?
I do not.
So you expect that we'll get the permits on Thursday?
So we won't actually get a permit issued on Thursday, but we have to get present to the Planning Commission and get approval there. And then there's several steps and portions of the permit, from building to planning, site development, and so forth. So it is a step in the process, but we are checking the boxes on all of the requirements.
Okay, so good, thank you.
Okay, Todd?
All right. We'll go ahead and pull up the. My latest letter for everyone. So as you guys, I mean, I'm no surprises. We are just continuing to work through all of the NetSuite implementation. I would say it's actually, even though I'm not where I want to be in terms of reporting capabilities, we're actually, there's no major flags other than just sheer amount of time it's taking to get it, validated and move forward. I am fully staffed finally, which is super nice, and we did replace Bridget, who was our senior GRF accountant last week, with a lady named Kat. She's already jumped right in, but obviously, as you guys all know, there's training issues. We're still dealing with a legacy system of GenArc. But one of the big issues on the, obviously the GRF side is the closing of last year. And so I needed a resource to do that outside of Amanda. We've all talked about that as we're putting most of our energy into getting the mutuals up and running. But that doesn't mean we're not getting closer. I've had an opportunity to really have some fun demoing this at the board meetings I've been in with the various mutuals, also including the short demos I did last month here and also at the board meeting. So, there's really, really a lot of exciting things happening in terms of getting the system finally where we are. And honestly, in, 30 to 60 days, we're going to be past all this and we're going to be running forward with a very robust system that'll meet all of our needs. So, just stay encouraged. It's obviously very tough. I have a lot of staff that are very worn out, putting in very long hours. They know the pressure, especially as you guys all know with Amanda being the keeper of a lot of the legacy knowledge and also being pretty much the shepherd of moving forward a lot of these new processes. Her and Tina, though, are doing just a tremendous job on everything. I did want to highlight a couple things, though, that aren't just financial. We're going to talk about the financial stuff, obviously, in here, but there's a lot of other parts of NetSuite that are moving forward that have a huge impact on this organization and this community, including the public safety integration. And so that's just one of the things that we haven't really talked about. Tom did a deep dive at the board meeting last month, and he also did that same presentation this week at the President's Forum. But we're actually the public safety integration in NetSuite. So all the cases and incidents that are now being logged into NetSuite, right? And so those reports were having to be manually generated, they're all automatically generated out at the end of the day. Much more visibility, responsiveness, and just efficiency with all the public safety cases and incidents. So, that's not something to be overstated in terms of just the overall community as a whole. And those are parts of, the NetSuite implementation that aren't readily visible to, on the financial side. I mean, we're still trying to collect money and pay bills, which we are. In terms of the other big bullets, we finally worked out all the bugs on the ACH direct deposit situation. So those are all flowing now. On the good news, when we get to the transfer fees and the sales for this year, one of the things with the direct deposits, historically, we've been trying to pull those funds on the 6th. Right now with the additional sales and getting all the new member records in and validating all that stuff, I am going to target the 10th next month, not because of any delays, just because the sheer timing of getting the sales and the new member records into NetSuite to validate those, to make that draw happen, it makes more sense to do it just a few days later than the 6th. So we're going to do it on the 10th. It's scheduled for the 10th. Whether or not we bring that back up, we do have had over the years some pushback in terms of when members get their actual revenue and some of their fixed income payments and turn those around. So it's something maybe we could discuss going forward in terms of the actual timing on that. It still allows us to have by the 15th, any delinquencies and stuff reported. But so we're scheduled to do it on the 10th, just because we saw this month. It wasn't because of the delay in the system. It was just sheer number of sales that impacted us, and a lot of those sales are targeted to close at the end of the month. So it's a good thing. That's all worked out. Accounts payable, we were behind in January as when we started doing everything. We're now pretty much current on all AP. So, all the bills are now being paid. The bugs on SquareWorks, which is the more advanced AP optical reader, and those things are all happening. It's not very exciting, but the checks are being cut and paid. We also, with Daniel joining the team, back joining the team from Bud's departure, we had a little bit of a hiccup there with Bud's departure and just, a gap there in terms of loading the budgets into NetSuite, validating the budgets. Obviously, the 5,500, one of those requirements is to show budget variances for the mutuals. And so that is one of the pieces that's been a stickler in terms of being able to get meaningful reports out to show where they are in the budget. So we have those are all loaded now and validated. There was some, some of the also behind the scenes stuff, some of the stuff I have to review, honestly, and I haven't had a chance because until I see it, I've had to make some changes. And so obviously when those budgets were loaded, how they aligned with the new chart of accounts, making sure that all those categories came in correctly and that they actually match all the mutual budgets as an exercise. So we've now checked that box. So now all we're waiting for really on the mutual financial package side is just the Amanda needs to do the allocation of insurance and the management fee. And as soon as those two exercises are done, we'll be able to be producing regular financial packages. There's some journal entries you need to catch up on. But other than that, we're really, really close. And so that means, like, as I showed you guys on the NetSuite, it's not that the data is not in there. There's just some missing pieces that skew the reports, right? If you don't have the management fee in there, we don't have the insurance correctly allocated, it skews. If we didn't have the budget correctly, it not only just skews it, but it's confusing. Like, the original GRF coupon portion was flowing through cost of sales. Obviously, that confuses people. So we need to move that as a coupon pass through in the new. It's really, really close. And then obviously what I wanted to do this morning was, because we don't want to be flying blind either, I went ahead and just showed all of our fund balances. Let me make this a little bit bigger for everyone. But I just want to show, the biggest thing to note here is really, the biggest swing we have in the beginning of the year is obviously the insurance payment, right? And so that insurance money is collected from the mutuals and then it flows right out, right? So depending on each year, when that timing is from the collection of the mutuals cash coming in, it's usually spread over December, January, and then the payment goes out in January, right? For this year, we're January first hit. We, posted all those for January 31st, but the draw actually happened on February 3rd. So if you look at the cash balances across just the whole organization, you can see that from the end of year 23 to 24, we did have a little more collection happening in the GRF side and pulling some of those insurance funds from the mutuals. So we're a little ahead on the GRF cash. But once again, it's just the insurance timing. If you look at the end of January, you'll see a very large higher cash balance that's sitting in GRF. And that's because that insurance payment didn't go out till the 3rd, right? We obviously have, every month we'll have normal variances depending on when we fund payroll. So that's why the MOD kind of varies a little bit, because it's just payroll timing when the payroll cycle hits with the calendar and when we're funding that. And then if you look now at, the end of where we are currently, we're pretty much back in kind of what I would say a normal steady state. So there's no really big surprises. We are still looking at our cash balances. We're still making sure things are in budget and we're paying bills. So even though it feels like we haven't seen financial statements, which certainly, and no one wants it more than I do, as I said this, there's no real scary surprises out there. It's not like the cash isn't being looked at. We are looking at the cash, we are paying the bills. And we're gonna be, as soon as Amanda finishes the insurance and the management fee allocations and we have the mutual financials flowing with CAT getting up to speed, we'll be issuing preliminary December statements for GRF and then immediately following that up with really Q1. So we just really, I just want to let everyone know it's, we are really making some huge progress. I wish we were further along than we are, but at the same time, it's just we can't predict all the things we, have happening. There's a lot of really more technical accounting stuff that is all working that most people don't really care about or understand, like lock boxes and payments and all that kind of stuff. So there's, the contract revenue for other revenue flowing in from like the RV lot rentals. So all those things are also progressing. They're just not really, there's a lot of, 20, 30 different bullet points in terms of actual transactional processes that we're documenting that we're working through. But the big things are we're collecting money, we're paying the bills. We are really close in the mutuals now with the budgets, with the ACH direct deposit all fixed. So it's, I just can't wait to get 45 days from now and be able to really enjoy this new system. And I've had a lot of fun really demoing it because people have asked questions. I can really drill right down into and show them the invoice and when it was coded. So, it's a really powerful tool. And then also not just from an external customer, our internal team also need these resources and know where their programs are spending. And so that's obviously coming as well. They've also had to take a little bit of a backseat to getting the mutuals up and running. So, I'm just gonna open it up for questions at this point. I mean, if there's anyone direct questions. Yeah, Dan.
There were 3 treasury notes or treasury bills that were due in February of 2025, I believe. I'm assuming they're in the LPL brokerage.
They
account
are.
at
They're in the
37.
brokerage
Did we
accounts.
roll them forward?
I believe we did. I'm confirming with Amanda
Okay.
right now. So I'll let you know.
They were all due within 30 days, which I didn't like. I'd like to get those staggered if we could. So I hope we didn't roll them all forward for the same period of time.
Yeah. I'll get back to the group with an email.
Okay.
I just gotta confirm it.
So the other question, back there.
So in terms of, I think the sweep accounts have been managed more effectively now. So last year, the income was about 450,000. So what do you think is the projected earnings for this year?
I wish I had a crystal ball. I mean, I think that, I think we're still gonna see some of the rates go down a little bit, right? So I would say I would probably half that amount, just depending on where we are with. But the good news, not to avoid the question, one of the great things is we've never had a tool where we can really start forecasting cash balances and actually forecast sweep revenue. And so one of the things going forward with Workday and with NetSuite is being able to do those forward-looking cash flow statements where we actually look at our budget, the seasonal and actually look at where we think our working capital excesses will be, how much we can, then to Dan's point, what is our, just like the mutuals, we need to up our game on terms of investment strategy and where that liquidity is and how long we need it. And we can't do that unless we really know what, our options are and how much excess working capital you have to invest. So I think going forward, that is a huge thing in terms of this committee, looking at our investment strategies and making it part of our regular agenda. So, but right now, I mean, I do look at all the rates, and I'm happy to forward to, for anyone in this group that wants, I do look forward at the bond markets and everything else to try to understand where the rates are going. I think we are gonna see some softening, but honestly, in the political environment, it's pretty tough to know what the Feds will do. I wish I did. If I did, I probably
You wouldn't
won't
be
be
sitting
here.
here.
Not that I don't like all of you.
I wouldn't be here.
Well, I mean, you can't control the interest rates, but at least the
Yeah.
sweeping and stuff is becoming more efficient.
It has, and you can see on here where we have the peg amounts and stuff, and I think we continue to look and review those and make sure that we are maximizing that sweep earnings.
Yeah, Todd, I noticed during the budget exercise that we did that all the senior managers are very well versed in their numbers. So with the new system now, do they have the ability to actually go in and drill into
Not
questions
yet, they
themselves?
will. We just haven't had the ability to have it stabilized where we can turn it on and have a workshop with them. Just like I've demonstrated with the mutual, this tool is gonna be available to our internal staff for review only license, so they can, for example, Ann can look into her GL and dig down into her expenditures, and now that the budgets are loaded, right, we'll have those opportunities as well.
Yeah, so it's easy enough to operate.
So easy,
Yeah.
it is.
They are patiently waiting.
Yeah.
Because they haven't received the reports either, so they're,
I got a lot of people that want a lot of reports.
Todd, are the budgets allocated by evenly 12 months? Have you done the spread yet?
So we've done the spread.
Okay.
I would say that the spread that, I would say this is our first attempt at spreading some of it. I would like to get a lot more deep in terms of a little more, obviously we spread utilities, we looked at seasonality. I think one of the things with like Workday, obviously, when we do our next year's budget, they can actually have AI built in, looking back trial balances and looking at every category in GL in terms of like percent spent by month, and we can go through and make clear assumptions on each basically GL line item on what the assumption is, because I think, as I've always said, I think the budgeting process is a everyday event, it's not a month event, it should be constantly going. And so I think with going through the assumptions on what that seasonality and how we budget each GL line, I think is gonna be part of this, will be a part of this upcoming budget, versus where we just kind of take last year's June and double it and kind of go from there. So
And that was 80% of the questions.
yeah, right, it was.
It was.
So
If we
it
can get
was.
the seasonality and we'll get a lot of those.
So for this year's budget, we did put seasonality into it, at I would say a high level, right? We didn't go too far down, but I think if we look at the Workday tool, and obviously very much a whole different kind of shift when we come to the 2026 budgets.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other, yeah, go ahead.
Just from having a career based in budgeting and trying to build in seasonality, I would just caution
you're
about
here.
that a little bit, because sometimes, it's like the really high level items, put the seasonality in, because that's just annoying, because if you don't build your seasonality quite right,
Yeah.
it becomes as bad of a
Right.
problem as just having a straight line budget,
Absolutely.
so.
Any other questions? Not, okay, we'll move on. Ian, do you have anything? Are you gonna pass?
I don't have financial reports, and Jeff stole my thunder, because that is the big project. We want to get through that milestone, and we'll kind of know our path moving forward with capital, so.
Okay,
more to come.
next will be the MTF reports. Someone wanna bring those up, please?
I think I'm driving, yeah. Sorry. I think
Yeah, so first 2 months have been great.
yeah,
It's way ahead of last year, which is a good thing. I don't know why.
Although, it's interesting, in February, we had 46 sales and only 31 fees. That's 15 difference.
And
And previously, like the month before, it was 3. Well, last year it was 11 difference. And it's just sort of,
we still need the breakdown of whatever these exemption is down at the bottom are. So we can still look at those to see if there's anything that can be done to reduce the number of exemptions
yeah,
so that we get more
at
fees.
least to understand what's going on.
Yeah, and that's on his list, it's on Todd's list.
It
I
is.
just don't know how high on the list it is. And I think it keeps getting pushed down.
No, it kind of stays in the same place.
Okay, okay, things go up.
It's 12th on the list.
It tries to go up and then it gets beat down again.
Now-
Now it stays in position 5.
With the switch to NetSuite, is member records on that yet, or they are?
So one of the biggest truly hurdles we had was aligning all those databases and getting member records, so it's
Yeah.
consistent across.
Okay, so is that going to change our ability to report on these sorts of things?
Be better.
Yes, okay.
We still, there was interest and Ted reminded me this morning, there's still interest in kind of having a presentation on what those exemptions are and why they are. Again, it's something that has been of topic of interest over the years, and there's been committees and board committees and finance committees that have examined this. It is something that definitely needs to keep coming up. So we'll schedule that with staff to do a presentation here in the near future on all those exemptions.
It was a decision ever made last month about what our budget number is? Are we gonna
I think we decided we'd stick with 400.
stick with 400 for now? And it looks like that looks right, especially after the first 2 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Anything else on
February
this?
is busy.
Throw
So-
optimism into the universe,
So Dan,
where we can anyway.
so in terms of what Jeff is saying, I guess our first intensive deep dive should be in terms of the MTF, and part of the issue is exemptions. But there were other issues we raised, I think, which there was not good data for. So I think one of the issues is that before we have the intensive session, and I don't know how it coincides with NetSuite, we need to make a set of questions about what kind of data we need before we can have that intensive discussion.
Yeah, well, I think the first one will be the MTF fees, and we need to get all that data. Right now, I think we just need to let the accounting group keep their heads above water.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And get the NetSuite, the statements, and then we can start figuring out topics and so on and so forth.
Maybe April or May, something like that.
Yeah. And
I'd like to bring up a little note that I found, fact that I found out the other day. I moved here in 2018. I paid $9,000 in MTF. Since then, 7 years have passed and the MTF hasn't gone up. Hasn't gone up if you account for inflation.
Oh, okay.
There's been 47.5% inflation in non-residential construction costs in Northern California in that interval. And so that, if you look at what it is today, 13.5, that's a 50% increase over what it was 7 years ago. So in other words, our ability to do the things that we need to do, because all this MTF goes for construction costs essentially, our ability to do that has not increased. We're able to accomplish the same amount of stuff with where our MTF is today. We're not doing more. There's this perception, I think, among a number of people that say, oh, we keep raising it and trying to do more and more. We're not. We're actually at the same place as we were 7 years ago. And we're able to do the same amount of stuff as we were 7 years ago, even though it's gone up this much. And it's very hard to sort of keep track of inflation, particularly if it's not like eggs that you go down to the supermarket and buy every day, right? And none of us buy construction. But it's been very, very, very strong in Northern California, well, in California generally. here particularly.
I think another point we need to keep in mind is that since the event center, we haven't taken out any substantial loan for our construction. Basically, we're relying on MTF to do what we need to do, right? So that's also a good sign, it's a good angle to let people know too.
And those loans are getting close to being paid off, at least the first
Yeah,
one
one of
is.
them retires.
One of them next year? Is it next year?
It's next year.
27.
27? Okay.
So then they won't be too upset when we need another loan. We haven't had a loan for a long time.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, I'm assuming nothing on that suite, we've already covered that. No update from the planning committee. No unfinished business. Moving right along, let's go to new business.
So this item kind of goes right along with the discussion you're just having in terms of our lending, our borrowing capacity, our current MTF rates and so forth. As you know, we do have the 3 outstanding loans. But one of the things that's come up over the last several years, especially as we did the facilities master plan, is the identification of the significant project to replace MOD. That has since then become somewhat intertwined with overall administration, and do we combine that into one central hub? We then had the food and beverage study and discussions about what opportunities there are involved in that and how that may play into additional space at Gateway if we move some administration around. All of that then gets wrapped up into is the property at 1220, which we call the medical center, appropriate for a new home to administration, or is that an asset that should be sold and those resources go towards a future home for MOD at its current campus? And then that gets wrapped up into the discussion of our 3 existing loans are secured by that property, and what is our ability to access future financing if we need to for projects if we don't have that asset to secure it. And then if we do have that asset, what is its capacity really? It already has, $7.5 million against it. If it's an office complex, office building, the value of that as leverage is somewhat questionable. So there's a lot of those types of questions that we really need to answer before we take the next step in deciding what should we do with that major project that needs to happen fairly soon in terms of MOD, food and beverage, overall administration. So the proposal here is to seek a capital financial advisor to work with us in identifying all of our opportunities, especially as it relates to our unique status as a trustee, in that we don't really have assets that we can sell. We don't secure a loan by. We have the trust agreement and that plays a part into it. So we want to make sure we overturn all of the stones and see what is available. When we did the event center financing, we went out to the market and got different proposals from banks for loans. And we started to go down the path of securing a loan with Wells Fargo, and they ended up backing out because they just didn't feel secure by our structure, where mechanics understood our model, they understood the membership transfer fee. And so we want to really work through everything and make sure we know what our options are before proceeding to the next level. You want to add anything to that at all?
Well, I mean, I think, you look at the unique nature of our situation and how we actually look at a capital structure. We talked about in this group a little bit. You look at the loans we have right now that are quasi-tied, obviously, to the medical building. That medical building, is just sitting there. It is there's not a lot of expenses to maintain it, but, if you look at our loan balances of 8.5, we're already at kind of 65% loan to value on that. So if we were to look at, when we spoke with mechanics and said, okay, when we had a offer a couple of years ago to sell that building, right? And, they're like, well, you probably need to keep like 5 million in with us in cash. It's kind of ours to hang on to. And we're like, well, that's kind of soft. They're like, typical bank. We can do whatever you want, but it's not really official in terms of if we were to actually get rid of that asset and we have these loans and what really truly is given our unique nature with the trust, how do we access capital? So we actually know that if we needed to do 10 to 15 million dollars or whatever that number is, how is that going to be structured? What does that look like? Can we do something with the medical building if we get an offer for 15 or 16 million dollars? Does that make sense, right? The medical building, obviously moving it into office space is a lower value than medical offices, but it's a tired building, would need a lot of work. So, what does that overall asset look like in terms of, and so I think having our capital structure looked at with a unique nature and looked at the trust, I think is a wise thing for this group to do. So, and good information is good information.
So process-wise, what we're asking you today is there's an RFP draft attached. If you have any commentary on that, we're looking to move that forward to the board and get that issued here early next month. And then we'll bring back proposals once we receive it. So today is kind of about moving forward with the RFP process if you support that concept.
So I think it's a great idea to have the different kinds of long-term capital options evaluated. But in terms of the options, if I'm reading it correctly, is there a kind of evaluation for an option where the MOD is accommodated in the medical building, but it's still a part of, it can still generate a certain amount of income on an annual basis? I know there are options about sales, but one possibility is like a hybrid where the MOD moves into the medical building, maybe occupy half or 60% of the complex, and the other percentage can be rented out for a continuing kind of income over time.
So we looked at that with ELS a little bit. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, and so if you were to go to the current MOD, people are kind of stacked. It's not the most efficient workspace. And so when they went and they scoped out all of the space, they did actually moving everything over there. And we couldn't move everything over there. Things like the newspaper and whatnot, you really couldn't like move them there. So they went through that exercise, and there's a little bit of a space there. I think it was like, it wasn't really that much left for retail. So could there potentially be some retail? Maybe, but it was like the benefit wasn't there, as opposed to if you moved everything and then reprogrammed space as opposed to building new space.
The real benefit of moving there is to be able to consolidate all of our operations. So you have GRF administration along with the MOD division all in one. I mean, right now you have accounting up there, but you have other administration down here. You have member records down here, but you have their supervisor and other portions up there. So the beauty was to consolidate everything. And that's still the goal, is to be able to consolidate operations, one-stop shop, if you will. But in order to do that, there really wasn't, and once we did the study, there wasn't very much space left.
So what happens to the space which is left if it's all consolidated in the medical building? Then the space which is evacuated here, what happens to that?
That's where we were looking at the food and beverage opportunities. The facility master plan also talks about the need for additional kind of meeting room space. So instead of building what they recommend in there, additional meeting room space behind the NPRs, you can maybe do that here. So it opens up other opportunities.
Makes sense.
So, question, can we really effectively move everything from MOD to the medical center location? If that's even the move we decided to do. We do have a gas tank there, right, underground,
Yes.
right? And then also our maintenance yacht, right, all of those things. kind of semi-industrial. Can we really move those
No.
things over?
It didn't include the
Exactly, so
shops.
we will still need to maintain the site up there.
Absolutely. That
right?
is your corporation yard.
Right, so we really don't have that much space that because just the MOD part, the accounting and that
Yeah,
building on the
so-
right side,
So
right?
you may be able to repurpose some of the existing MOD and maybe lease out some of that to vendors if you wanted to go down that, but that would still function as our corporation yard. You still have the maintenance, the bus maintenance, you still have your workshop, you still have all of the storage up above for landscaping, for everything else. That's your corporation. The problem now is it's your corporation yard and it's your administration office and it's your public interaction. Not good combination of services. So if we did do a project up there that, you know, was a redo and accommodated MOD and administration, it would have to look at how you can organize that lot up there to separate those services.
Yeah, and then you think moving a food court over there with the gas tank is?
No,
So the concept is if you imagine, you know, the office is there, the office is behind us, member records, recreation, if you take those out, you've opened up about 700 square feet at Gateway for, could be more food service, could be additional amenities for residents. Not up at MOD.
So I have a question about who are you sending this RFP to? What kind of?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously, when you talk to like, so Jeff and I have actually had some conversations and are having ongoing conversations with, you know, different banking institutions that, you know, that are a little more obviously creative, you know, like, you know, we had a conversation with, you know, JP Morgan, for example, and some of these other institutions that may be able to sharpen their pencil a little bit, in US Bank and their creative versus just mechanics. However, I'll give you an example of like Lazard Capital. So they are firms out there that specialize in capital restructuring and looking at capital structuring outside of a bank that just wants to do business with you.
Yeah.
Some of them are specialized in succession planning and stock purchase buyouts, and they all have a kind of niche. So we are gonna be putting a list together that will show, but it's gonna select those type of firms that actually look at, you know, not just exit strategy type stuff, but actually look at working capital solutions that are, you know, unique in terms of nonprofits worlds, in terms of everything. So outside just the bank route, still continue to have the bank conversations because ultimately it will end up with a bank, but not, you know, but not the work itself.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that we're seeing in the financial markets is that private equity is funding a lot of what is called private loans. And so they're not going through the banks.
Right. A lot of PE firms.
And so there's sort of something of a shift in the whole way that these kinds of things are financed. And we have a cash flow stream that's incredibly secure.
We definitely have our ability to almost like tax ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, and
It's
so.
like a bond,
and
it's like a bond issue.
Yeah, so that could be securitized. And I think there are companies out there that want to do that. That's why I want to be sure you're looking more widely than just be they.
Nancy, you had a question?
Yeah, if, when we go with the RFP, do we have in our mind a maximum amount that we would be willing to pay, or that this is worth to us to get this information?
So how we would fund this, especially because it really involves the medical center property, how we would propose to fund it is using that MOD reserve that we received from the last sale that fell out of escrow. So there's some funding left in there that we've been using to do the studies and so forth.
Oh,
We
I
would
see.
recommend utilizing
But
that, but the exact amount that this will cost, I don't have a dollar figure. Once we receive some different proposals, we'll bring it back to you and the board and say, is it worth it?
I just wondered if there's an amount that you would say, like, no way am I gonna
That'll
pay.
be up to all of you and the board.
Right,
Yeah,
and
go
how
ahead.
much is in that reserve?
I think there's,
Yeah, it's about 800,000.
Yeah, it's a decent
Thinking all
amount.
about,
Go ahead.
yeah.
It won't take off.
I'm trying to talk to the boss. This is great. I think this is gonna give us a lot of information. Don't you think it would be helpful to request some idea of timing of these deliverables so that both planning and finance have some idea of when we're getting this information?
Yeah, we'll have deliverables and timing built into that, so we can kind of report out. I don't think it will be a very lengthy study process. We should get to a report fairly quick.
So Jeff, in the RFP, there's a couple of places on the deliverables we said about our future needs. Exactly what time horizon are we asking this firm to look at?
So the facilities master plan kind of looked at a 10-year window, and then we had beyond 10 years. So I think we're kind of looking at that, focusing,
years.
yeah, really focusing on that major project. We all know the pickleball is there, it's budgeted, but that major project that kind of includes the medical center, MOD, GRF, admin, food and bev, kind of that core bit of capital that would be needed to accomplish that.
Okay, Roy, you had a question?
I have a question here. I think we are here to serve the residents. And the RFP should be including the residents feeling about everything moved out. Any service they want, they have to go there out there, and traffic will be increased. And eventually there are certain other problems. So if one complete the study, we should be including residential service into.
So this is really about how do we access and what are the available resources should the board ultimately want to pursue one of those avenues. So it kind of unlocks the door to being able to make decisions. How you make those decisions on those projects and how you involve the community in that decision, that's kind of separate. This is really, do we have access to, what are the options if the board chooses to proceed in that direction?
So it's just giving us options.
Yeah.
Correct.
Any other questions on this? Before we move ahead, we have to go back. Leanne had a question that we missed.
Leanne, do you still have a question?
I didn't have a question. I don't know why somebody thought I did. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
We'll blame Tim.
misunderstanding.
Okay, we'll move forward then. Next is.
So we're looking for
Oh, we need a motion, I'm
yeah,
sorry,
we're
we need a
looking for
motion.
recommendation.
Mary?
Okay, I recommend that the Finance Committee recommend to the GRF Board to issue a RFP, a request for proposals for consulting services related to the capital financing planning.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I do want to make a comment. Now, many of us who moved in here, we took the internet for granted. We have built-in internet in our home, okay? When I moved in here, almost 13 years ago, that wasn't the case. And what happened was the board at that time put out a request for service to our residents on the Westmore News and said, we want to staff an IT ad hoc committee. And they're looking for residents' involvement. And then there was a team of 6 with 2 board members, 4 or 5 residents, and I was one of them. I looked at it and I said, well, this is good. I just retired from my career in IT, I can do it. So I was on the team. One of our recommendations was to have a valley-wide internet. And of course, people say, oh, it'll never work. Some people don't even have email. Well, so there was a lot of resistance. But the idea and the recommendation was originated from a residents ad hoc committee. And I do want to urge the board to think about that possibility. We have a wealth of knowledge in this community and many, many willing bodies. If we, every time we have something we need to solve, maybe first think about, is it a resident committee to do the first step? Is the right way to go? Or we always have to engage professional. Now, I don't question what we are proposing here, but I just want to put that idea back on the board's mind. There are a number of benefits by engaging residents first. Well, Lisa, first, we save a little money, and then it's that the buy-in is much easier, whatever recommendations that come out. And we will eventually need to engage professional when we get further into the study. But initially, I do think this community can provide a lot of good input in some of our planning ideas.
Yeah.
That's
I
all.
take your point on that. I think that is a good idea. And in this particular case, this is a very complex, and I really think this is such a case that just give it to the professionals.
Of course, yeah. Like I said, I'm not questioning the merit of this one, but I do want to take the opportunity to plant this idea back into the board's mind. We should first think about using the residents, and there are a lot of willing body and capable.
It's kind of like the marketing task force is currently engaged in the
Yes,
process.
that is one of the examples, so.
And the insurance committee?
It can be done because, you know, as complicated as the internet thing it was from the residents.
Any further discussion? If not, Deborah, can I have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Rain?
Yes.
Lau? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Byram?
Yes.
Castillo?
Yes.
Singh?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
And Hurd.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Great. Okay, now we can move forward to the food study.
So the item before you today is asking you to consider a recommendation to authorize or to recommend to the board to authorize phase 2 of the food study. And so we're concluding the first part of it, and essentially what that was doing was truly measuring, use upon the appetite for the community to expand food services. It just came to me. To expand food services and really to kind of, based on the desires of the community, to really gauge that into what type of business model would work. Because it's one thing to say, oh, the community wants it, but we needed to make sure that what they wanted could translate into something that would be a successful business opportunity. And so we're at that point now where we have almost all the information we need to develop a request for proposal to find an operating partner. So phase 2 is to develop that RFP. Before we do that, there's one area that we didn't evaluate as part of the first phase, and that's the Creekside restaurant space. And I think it's really important that we reiterate that we didn't make this the first part. We did not want to make it a referendum on the Creekside Grill, nor is this phase. But what we want to do is take a look at the physical aspects of it, because it's going to be a real, kind of like ground zero for, whether Stan participates and he's the operating partner or we have a new operating partner. And also part of it is talking about evaluating the actual experience. And what that means is, there were these concepts that were kind of identified as things that would be successful based on the feedback and all the engagement we did with the community. And so it's really looking at what it is now versus if that was the first place to make a change, what are we going to talk to the partner about where we want to see them to kind of make those first shifts in food service delivery. So the way this is written, it's in 2 different parts of the scope. The first is actually doing that Creekside evaluation and helping us draft the RFP and push it out. And then there's another component which, and you'll see this as a not to exceed amount, it's really to helping us recruit different potential operating partners to come in and make proposals and go through the, they can kind of help us with the backgrounds on it. This is, the firm we've been working with, this is what they do, they're industry experts. And so the idea is to keep them on until we actually have the operating partner in place. So the way this is written, it's a not to exceed amount. Because the timeline on finding the operating partner, it's a little bit, we're not gonna say we're just gonna keep it open a month. It may take a little bit longer to find the right group to come in, have them do site visits, whatnot. But of course, we want to be very expeditious in this. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
When's the contract with Creekside up?
The contract that we have is through December, but we have the ability to extend. So it's
It
not.
has to be mutually, he has to agree to extend.
Yeah, but
so-
we've spoken with Stan. He knows, we've been very transparent with him. He knows everything that we're working on, and he's actually interested in putting his hat in the ring for this. So it's all very good and above board.
Yes. Go, yeah, you're going.
I just have a question based on this whole conversation today of timing. If there's consideration of moving out of Gateway, wouldn't that be part of the whole discussion about food service? And maybe is this too fast until we see all of our options? That's my question.
So the interesting thing about that is you want to have a partner in first to kind of, so let me just back up a second. We're looking for an operating partner. What we have right now is a lease. So in the lease, we just have space that we hand over to a restaurateur to come in and operate their business. In the operating partnership, they'll work with us as we have these opportunities that are available. Yeah. And so that way we can build something which is mutually beneficial to both GRF and the operator. You know, because site selection is going to be important for expansion of food service and how we kind of are co-partners in capital investments. And there's different ways to do this. So financially, what you want to have is somebody a little bit more entrepreneurial and developing a business in here. So we're sharing those things. So we don't need to know it now because.
You're talking about partner and continued growth.
Yes.
So Creekside would be like your first launch with this partner and then be able to look at other opportunities as they become. But we do want to be in position where we can move on those things and we're not, 10 years down the road still going, what is it we should do? So that's why the information in the first item is more critical.
So Ed, when you're saying finding an operating partner, so the operating partner will evaluate the options of the integrated kind of food services, which was the demand in some of the surveys that, delivery and cafe services and restaurants. So all of that stuff is part of the reference.
Yeah, so there's the final document from the first phase, that'll be completed about April, and that'll be attached because, the business that comes in will know that the far-reaching vision is this.
Okay.
And so when you develop the operating agreement, which is why we need their expertise, it really commits them. So they can't kind of come in and suddenly use our resources to do whatever they want. They actually need to come in and so they need to be able to see, and we're gonna be really transparent that these types of things will be successful. There's a certain amount of measurement that came with synergies, like work on the first, the first scope that we're wrapping up. So it's a little bit different than just an RFP that says, oh, give us your idea of what you want to do here. It's very responsive into, this is the concept that we want delivered here. We know that this is the immediate opportunity, and that's part of what they're working on. Also is the wrap up and then part of the RFP development. It'll be talking a little bit more precisely about what that Creekside site opportunity is, and what the vision is. And that's a vision that we have on what that should be transformed into. So you want to find somebody that aligns with that core vision that'll then carry out future elements.
So, and when you talk about looking for an operating partner, have the decision been made that GRF will get into the food business?
No.
Okay, because when you talk about partner, that means GRF will have some involvement, right? In operation and decision-making of this whole food enterprise in the valley.
Well, I mean, there's different levels of partnership. And so part of the partnership is they're gonna have a financial stake in the game. Because again, as we go through with expansion, with tenant improvements, if you will, we want them to take some of that burden as well. And there are different ways to do that. Again, as opposed to a straightforward lease is, here's your space, do what you want. This one is different. They have to be responsive to the vision that's been articulated through the process that we went through.
And they have some financial risk.
Yes,
And we get some financial risk
yes.
by doing it that way.
So that's why, so it's shared, it's
driving it because food services is definitely not our core competency. And we might even need to get a staff, you know, they're knowledgeable in that area to make this a success. And I'm really worried about we getting into something that is not our core competency.
Again, we're not getting into the actual food service delivery. This is actually it's kind of a common relationship that you see in commercial development, where you look for food service partner to come in to take that part of the
Like a
vision.
shopping center.
And it's real, yeah,
Like a shopping center.
yeah, very much so.
Or like an airport.
Yeah.
Like an
where,
airport.
you know,
Yeah, airport staff, they're not food experts, but they work with that.
Yeah.
It's a tenant partner. It's different than just a straightforward.
So I think the clarity is that we share some financial risk, but the operational stuff will be all done with their expertise.
It better be.
Yeah.
I don't want to see another higher senior managers being created in GRF.
I think that's something that Jeff mentioned to me the other day. It was kind of a revelation for me, was that the kitchen in at Creekside is way too small.
Yeah.
It can barely serve what Creekside is doing. We don't actually have a facility, a kitchen type area, production kitchen, that we would need if we are to provide a wider range of food services for our residents. And so that's actually a benefit to have that sort of a capability, would be beneficial, because then an operator could come in and say, okay, yeah, we can do deliveries, we can do this, we can do that, all the various different things that people would like to see present here at Rossmore. And so I can understand sort of where it's going, and that it might be a benefit, a long-term benefit, if we were to accomplish something like this, rather than just be a kind of a one-off with Creekside.
And are you asking us at this point, is the total 59,100 already approved? Or are you asking us?
We're asking to recommend that, and it would be a not to exceed. Because if it doesn't take us 4 months, they're not going to expend that full amount.
And this is budgeted in the capital budget already under the next phase. I think we had
Like a 200,000 set aside.
200,000, so this would be a part of that.
Is it possible to only recommend spending or getting an RFP for the 19,000 now and then come back for the 39,500? What's the difficulty?
It's more of a timing.
And you want continuity and kind of being able to progress it. It is a tight window
And it
that we're
could-
trying to fit into, because that lease does expire.
And it commits the firm's time, and they're really in demand.
How much money have we spent on this study so far?
Boy, good question. I don't know that offhand.
It's like
Only the survey, right?
40 or 60,
I think it was about 60.
60.
I'll find it in a second.
Any other questions?
So what exactly is the cost of the optional RFP support? That's the additional kind of?
So they're gonna help us recruit, right? Because they're gonna help us recruit, talk food service to food service. They can talk technical opportunities and deficiencies of the physical, things that we have. And also and then they'll also help us with the interviewing, with vetting out the right. I mean, it's not gonna be exclusive to them. We need to include some community members, through the planning committee and whatnot that has been working on it. And really just to kind of help us secure that. And I will say that what will happen is, even going into that final operating agreement phase, that could look different based on whoever the operating partner is. So we were talking about the production kitchen. You may have someone locally that has a production kitchen off-site that might be able to, so you have to work these things all into agreement. So this is a group that has worked in this very specific industry on all these different types of models. And so to set this up for success, certainly from a contractual basis as well, to have them there through that would be very beneficial to the success of the program.
So just for follow-up, so that RFP support would also include evaluation of different options for providing integrated food services.
We've already done that part.
That was phase
We've
one.
already done that part. That was phase one.
But the actual cost benefit of those different kinds of, that hasn't been done yet, has it?
What do you mean cost benefit?
Like, we can provide this range of services and this will be the contractual cost. Or we can provide this range of services and this will be the contractual cost, that kind of stuff.
I don't think we're there yet because you looking at in this portion, the Creekside and the available resources and infrastructure there. And then what it would take to expand the vision of the phase one document to other locations. And so what the financial investment of doing that, timing of doing that, all of those obligations wouldn't come to light, right, until future phases.
Yeah, that's another stage then.
So the way this is stated, though, the first 19,000 will simply be to work with the person chosen to develop the RFP.
The RFP and the.
Then once it's developed, based on that approved RFP, then you'll start working for the support. That person will be a part of going out and looking for who can and
They'll
what
be
can.
actively, recruiting people to submit proposals, et cetera.
Yeah, just one thing I would want to make sure that the consultant provides us is assessment of the financial risk and ways to mitigate it. And even though I'm in support of this, it makes me very nervous. Carrie's Kitchen came in and kind of flopped, Hangout Cafe closed for dinner time. We had Napa Deli come in and close. And so it's like, and when I worked at Wells Fargo, one of the things I did was locations planning, and everybody wants a shopping center wants to get Wells Fargo as an end cap, right? And so all of these developers would come to us and say, well, would you be the first one to, help in this shopping center development? We had to tell them, no, we need 30,000 people in the area, because we got to share the pie with all of the other providers and stuff to make it viable to open a branch here. So I'm kind of going like, who could make that work? A second restaurant, we've only got 11,000 people and nobody's coming through the gate. And there's restaurants right over there that they could go to, but they're not because they're all flopping. So I'm just, a little concerned about the financial risk here.
You just illustrated phase one.
Yep.
And that's the value of phase one.
That's right.
And what we went through to say, we don't want to just open a second restaurant to compete with the first restaurant. It's what is the global food service program for Rossmore that could be supported by the residents' success. So
Successfully.
Successfully
Yeah, that's the
operate.
point, yeah.
And what is the volume? I don't know. Ann, did you want to expand on that?
I did go to the presentation.
No, I was gonna say, it was the first, and again, just like very 30,000 square foot. Every example that you mentioned was somebody coming in trying to do a second restaurant. If you were at the presentation, they talk about day part drivers, like, and people want this type of experience, this time of day, this type of experience. We know where there's certain communities of interest, if you will, say like at the golf course, right? And ebbs and flows. When you have somebody on site and it's the same business, they can actually kind of construct something more portable.
Right, that's the
Grow things
mitigation.
versus, like here, we had people come in and we brought them into a space where people will sit and play cards for hours, right? So but it didn't operate as a cafe. So you had somebody kind of like, whether it's grab or go or something in the Redwood room, but you didn't have, it wasn't really set up to be that place with a turnover of customers and whatnot. So it wasn't conducive to that. So it's really not like anything we've seen. Anything that comes up as a second service won't be like any of those things that you've seen. They'll be set up quite
And
differently.
are the food trucks that come in on a weekly basis, are they profitable? Do they?
No, we don't make money off of those.
But do they make money? Or do they want to come here or do we have to subsidize them? Do they make money?
There's a handful of them that do well.
There's a handful that do
Yeah,
well.
because if they don't, then we actually have to pay them, so some of them will just make. So at the ones that do the best clearly are at the farmer's market, right? Because you have that built-in audience, and the lobster truck. So,
The lobster truck has a long line,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
And given the expanding of these funds to get the information we need and the work we need and what to do, the answer could be we can't do it. So it could be a no at the end of it, if that was the right financial thing.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we might not get any entrepreneurs that, in the business that think that this is a model they can make work. Or we may say what you're proposing in the relationship you're proposing doesn't make sense for the board.
But we now know why.
Yeah, so, you know, this is we're going out to see what the market is.
And it's possible that when you interact with these contractors, they might change their vision a little bit, but the point you're making, and it's really important in that when they provide an integrated set of services, they will share the risk of those kinds of different range of services. It's not just like opening a restaurant, but it's many different options they'll do. So that's the part, I think, which creates synergy, some kind of synergy.
You know, when you talk about food, you always get people excited. However, I echo what Nancy mentioned. We really don't know the demand. And we see example after example, the business trying to operate food service close to us, you know, close down. So I was thinking from day one, I really think this is one of the example. It could be initiated by the resident first to see if we do have that kind of interest, you know. So I'm very, you know, I'm indifferent to it. I'm not excited about this whole food study per se.
But I would argue it has been initiated by the members with phase one of the study. All the members were, so many people were interviewed, response to the surveys, so.
Yeah, but they're different. Responding to survey is different from a task force that, you know, involve residents from day one to think this is the path forward that has potential because there's demand. I really don't know about the demand.
Well, to me, what I'm understanding is getting this information tells us, yes, it is financially possible to do this based on what residents, but if it's not, we have the evidence to say it won't work.
But that definitely will give us something to show the resident, but we already spent what, 50, 60,000, and we're asking for another 60,000. And I just, you know, in the whole scheme of things, this is not a large amount, but if we do one study after another study with no good footing, we're just wasting money.
And how much is the rent for Creekside?
Right now, it's about $13,500 a month, I believe.
Okay, so that's $150,000 a year. So I'm just trying to put it in perspective. What we've spent here is sort of less than one year's rent on that.
3 months.
And we're talking about, you know, trying to understand what what our options really are in terms of experience here at Rossmore. I think that's, it seems like the amount of money we're spending is well within reasonable amount of money.
I know studies always kind of feel like we're studying, but those studies are what set you up for success. When we go to the marketplace and we have a vision and a document that we can go to the marketplace with and say, this is what we are looking for based on what our community needs and interests are, it is much more successful than just going out and saying, would you be interested in coming and trying to open a shop here? You know, would you come be our anchor? That's not what a entrepreneur is going to want to know. They want to know all of that background information that we've been working towards through phase one.
And I do have to say, it's not just opinion on what you like to eat. There's a whole technical component of the facilities that we have. Because so many people were saying, why do we have this study? Why don't we just serve bloody blah out of like dollar? Because they like the environment there. And so if you wanna do food service, you have to do it right, or the whole valley is gonna be shut down by the health department, you know, so I mean, there are really all these different areas of expertise, and I like to look at on less than, way less than half of the cost of a full-time staff person with food service industry. We have had somebody come in and set us up for success in that next step. So there are different ways to look at it.
I understand
want
the
you to feel good about
complexity,
the
that's my concern, is that we really want to dive into it.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not,
No,
go ahead.
I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Directors to authorize the general manager to execute the Phase 2 proposal from Synergy for the food and beverage study not to exceed a total of $59,100.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Deborah, any other discussion? Deborah, roll call, please.
Certainly, Ring,
Yes.
Lau,
I abstain.
Byram,
Yes.
Castillo,
Yes.
Singh,
Yes.
Star is excused, Hurt,
Yes.
it is carried.
Great. Okay, next, and I guess you're up again on the,
I'm spending a lot of money today. All right, so the next one is asking you to consider a recommendation to the board to authorize an agreement with its RMA, Russell Mitchell and Associates for irrigation design services to relocate an irrigation line that currently would run under the proposed pickleball facility. So there are actually two water lines underneath that site. One of them is a city sewer line, which actually has to be part of the permitted capital process. We've been wanting to keep this one separate, so it's not permitted, so we could pretty much time the project based on when we move this. And what it would require is basically a relocation of a high pressure water line, so it does need a design. We will need to send it out to bid for a contractor to move the line. So the design is $9,000. That doesn't commit anything to the construction, but we want to have that so we can bid out that work. And we actually have vendors identified that know.
Are we going out to more than one person for this cost, or is this the only person we're gonna send this RFP to? It's just one?
Not for
group?
the design, because they know our stuff, but for the work, we would bid that out.
We're not bidding this out.
No, not for the design.
This is a designer that is extremely familiar with our irrigation system within the golf courses. They've done a significant amount of work, so making sure that what we're doing is integrating in the amount of background information that we have to provide to them. Having that continuity is kind of worth the sole source.
Okay.
Especially for an amount of $9,000.
Now, what if something goes awry at the planning commission and we can't move ahead? I'm just wondering about the timing of this.
Yeah, so this would go to the board for approval, the date, so Thursday, right? And that's the night we go to the, I would say planning commission.
Yeah.
So should something happen and there's big deferrals, so I would say you never want to test the fate and say anything. We have crossed every T, dotted every I. The city has been amazing in helping us get this final packet together. There's absolutely no outstanding issues. And so provided it moves forward, we want to get the design done anyway, because we need to bid it to understand that specific cost, just for like the true budget. But it doesn't mean that we need to proceed with construction on it if there's some type of a delay.
Yeah, and this is part of the project. You risked the money in doing the design, all the work that we've done thus far, which has been a significant investment in this project. This is kind of a component. If we get to a place and we bid it out and the bids come back sky high and the board goes, no, we're not proceeding at this point, we have the documents for a later date that we choose to do it or to rework it. But it's something that's necessary in order to proceed regardless.
Yeah, and you said there's a city sewer line?
No,
Oh.
it's not sewer.
It's not I'm so sorry, did I say that? I'm sorry, stormwater.
It's not a city, it's our storm drain that goes from the parking lot to the bioretention.
Okay, because you said sewer line.
No, it's stormwater.
Well, regardless.
Storm, yeah.
It's stormwater.
Okay,
Oh, I thought
okay,
it was a
so
city.
you misstated it, because my concern was.
I totally misstated it, I take it back, I apologize.
My concern was that it was a city property.
No.
That blows up on the pickleball court is what happens.
Yeah.
But that's why we.
That's why we're
we do
moving any
want-
water line from out from under it.
Pickleball guys are.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to create panic throughout you. If anybody turned off, that's gonna be the next, check the next rumor out there. You know.
Any other discussion? Yes, go ahead.
Just to kind of clarify, for those of us who aren't financially astute, is this the correct understanding? That if the pickleball project for some reason doesn't proceed, this money won't be spent?
No,
This is just saying.
It'll still be spent.
The design will be spent.
it'll still be spent.
It was, you're still gonna do, no, the
9,000.
money will be spent, but we won't do the project. Okay.
Right.
You still move this.
Design it.
It's all part of the, so we kept this project separate because it's not part of something that is permittable, because it's really considered maintenance and repair. But design for the whole project, that's all complete, like we've expended that money because you need all of that in order to then get your documents together so you can bid, so you know the true cost. So this is the last part of knowing the complete cost of everything. It's integral to the project. We just held it aside.
Any further discussion?
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the board to approve a capital budget expenditure of $9,000 to fund irrigation design as part of the pickleball capital project, and authorize the general manager to execute an agreement with Russell D. Mitchell and Associates for irrigation design services.
Mary seconds. Any further discussion? If not, Deborah, if we could have a vote. please.
Certainly. Ring,
Yes.
Blau,
Yes.
Byram,
Yes.
Castile.
Yes.
Singh,
Yes.
Stars excused, Hurt,
Yes.
it's unanimous.
Anything further? If not, we are adjourned.
All right.